All right, this is interesting. The Federal Communications Commission, which governs all things broadcasting and all things that involve telecommunications. The head of the FCC is a man by the name of Brendan Carr, FCC chair. And he has this week taken aim at foreign-based call centers. And what Carr wants is English proficiency as a requirement for overseas employees and anyone that is representing a company in the United States. For example, have you ever gotten on the phone with a customer question or complaint, and you know immediately the person on the other end is not from this country? Now, their English could be infinitely better than your ability to speak their native language. Got that? Sometimes nuance and sometimes the way phrases and words are spoken, they just seem to go in opposite directions. And so Carr is also proposing that phone, internet, and cable companies have to disclose a customer service agent's location. In other words, that agent has to say, hello, my name is, and I am in whatever country it may be. Some of this stuff just makes so much sense on a common sense level. It's a business. You're trying to make it as customer friendly as possible. And you have to understand that the front door to your company is the person that picks up the phone on the other end. Molly Moore knows that. She is the COO, the Chief Operating Officer of a company called Liveops. It is a high-tech customer service company. They have agents in the United States and Mexico and the Philippines and other places. And she, too, is feeling along the same lines I am. If you do business in the United States, if you are a United States company, why is your call center not in the United States? And she has some time here on Saturday to talk with us all about that. And Molly Moore, how are you on this glorious Saturday?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm glad you're here. Look, the most frustrating thing, I think, for most of us is to get on the phone with some sort of customer complaint or question, and all of a sudden, you know, you're talking to someone who's halfway around the world, who may not understand your situation. They may not understand what your lifestyle is. They might not even be able to communicate with nuance and whatnot in a way to get the problem solved. I don't think this is an unreasonable request that the FCC is making of companies. At least have some of your call service agents in the United States. Do you think it's unreasonable?
No, absolutely not. We're all for having agents in the United States and employing Americans, but the world has changed and it's just not the reality today. But, I think for a lot of people, customer service feels worse over the past few years because companies have optimized for speed and cost instead of actual resolution. Good customer service companies are really building their service around the consumer themselves. And really able to solve the problem. So, customers these days are having to repeat themselves, start over, and they are very frustrated. So we understand why the FCC is bringing it.
Yeah, and I found this astounding. Brendan Carr, the FCC chair, says 70% of U.S. businesses outsource at least one department, including customer service call centers, to overseas locations. I just had an incident with Verizon, who happens to be my provider for my cell service, and the woman was very nice. I'm not sure exactly where she was located. I know that she spoke English far better than I spoke any language that was her native language, but it just took so much time to understand words that she was saying that were not normal to that particular problem that I had. And the only thing I could figure out after I hung up is the reason why these companies are doing this is because it's cheap. It's cheaper to pay somebody to sit in someplace in India than it would be someplace in Chicago. This has got to be all economically driven, right?
Often it is, but it's much more than that. And I think the FCC got it a little bit wrong in terms of, how they're presenting this. So we can talk about that in a second. Let me answer your question. So offshore exists because customer demand doesn't show up in this neat, predictable box. Companies need to support consumers 24/7 and handle huge spikes in volume during things like tax season or maybe a catastrophic event or like a holiday season. And they need to do that in a way that's financially sustainable. So global delivery helps solve for scale, availability, and access to talent. It allows companies to provide continuous support, often in multiple languages. We're a global world, and doing it without building massive fixed infrastructure in a single location, which is historically how we have served consumers. So the intent was never just cost reduction. It's about being able to serve customers reliably at scale. And the real shift now is moving from a single model to a more flexible one, combining onshore, nearshore, offshore, and now AI in a way that delivers both scale and quality.
Yeah, and AI is another whole tangent of all of this. But if this was to serve customers better, I think most of these companies have failed, at least in the United States. I don't know what their volume of business, for example, Verizon, I mentioned Verizon. Carr went on to say that AT&T and T-Mobile haven't responded to immediate comment. Oh, I guess it was the people Bloomberg was writing the story. But the fact of the matter is, I'm in the United States. I'd like to talk to somebody who's in the United States. I understand about trying to make customer service better, but I give them an F if they're trying to make customer service better.
Yeah, I can't disagree with you. And I think, this question, what FCC has brought to the table is really not about onshore versus offshore. This is really about customer experience and accountability. There are all kinds of tools available now. There's accent neutralization services. There are language translation services, and there's the way in which all of these are being built around the consumer. And so we really need to frame this around providing a better experience and having the system, infrastructure, and orchestration in place, whether it's onshore or offshore, to really meet the customers where they are. And so it's really about the actual system itself.
And is that where the FCC got it wrong? You mentioned it just a few minutes ago, the FCC got it wrong. Is that in essence where they got it wrong?
Yes, exactly. Yes. Yeah. And I think, we need to stop thinking in terms of location and start thinking in terms of the orchestration, bringing together the right mix of human expertise, giving those humans the tools that they need to be successful, as well as bringing technology to deliver the best outcome.
Okay, so what is the answer here? And I know that this is a complex problem, and you mentioned AI just a moment ago. What is the answer? Let's take, for example, a call center for a major business, whether it be, and again, I don't know if these call centers are outsourced to other countries, but let's just take, for example, a big box company like Target, for example. What's the answer for a company like that, or for any other company that has outsourced their call centers? They have these places in India, Pakistan, Indonesia, wherever they may be. Okay, you've invested there. That's where you have these employees. What do you do at this point? Because obviously it's not working. So what should those companies be doing at this point?
Yeah, I mean, it's a mixed model of leveraging AI and technology and automation where it makes sense, and training and providing great certification programs for the human agents where that is needed. I think with AI, a lot of companies lean too heavily into automation too quickly. Automation works really well for simple tasks, but it breaks down when situations get really complex or emotional. So the real problem is how AI is being applied. I know your listeners out there have all struggled with using an AI chatbot because, they just don't get it right. And some customer issues just aren't simple. And people don't speak in clean, structured requests. They jump around, they add emotion, and they expect context to carry through. And when AI misses that, it creates a real disconnect that slows everything down. And so, people really, they just want to talk to a human and at some point in their experience. And AI really needs to be leveraged for the simple and then the more complex sent to a human. And that needs to happen really quickly. And so when that works and you develop that appropriately, there's magic.
Oh, no, absolutely. Those chat things are are ridiculous because most people have specific questions and they're not set up to deal with specific questions. And also, I think it infuriates me that there's a major pharmaceutical, drugstore, let's call them drugstore chain, that you can't get through to a human voice unless you go through this AI-generated person that is asking all of these questions. And finally, after about 7 or 8 questions, you can actually talk to a human voice. Is it a impracticality from a business standpoint just to have a human voice at the inception of the call? In other words, can you just talk to somebody that's you on the other end of the phone that maybe can farm you out to wherever the problem is? Is that just impractical and a product of the 1970s? It's never coming back again.
No, it's not impractical at all. In fact, there are situations in which it would make the most sense to have a human answer first. And then as we get to maybe the wrap up to the conversation, maybe the shipping information or whatever that case may be, then you move it to AI, or you put AI in the front end and quickly be able to get them to a human when needed. So people don't mind using AI. Our research shows that, at least not until it gets in the way. What actually frustrates them is feeling blocked from a human when they actually need help. Yeah. So use automation when and where it works. Design your system that way, but make it super easy to reach a person when it doesn't. And also make sure you're very transparent around when you're using AI. That really frustrates consumers as well, is when they don't know right away that they're leveraging AI until it becomes frustrating.
Yeah. All right, Molly. Well, I hope people are listening to you because I think you're somebody that's got this thing figured out. And thanks for trying to get us back on track with all of this. Again, Molly Moore, she is the Chief Operating Officer for Liveops, a service firm. So if somebody goes to Liveops, who do they get to know besides Molly Moore, and what can you do for a company?
Well, we have a large national team in place to help. So please go to liveops.com. But we have a network of over 20,000 in our agent community that are distributed across the U.S., the Philippines, and Mexico. And we would love to hear from you. Beautiful. All right, Molly. Well, thanks for your time today. Stay well. Yours is a voice I think we need to hear, and hopefully we can reconnect down the road. Thank you.